Evening, folks, and welcome to tonight's review. I was originally going to review a Pilsner from Deschutes, Pine Mountain Pils, but it hit me that today is National Bourbon Day, so ostensibly I really have to review a bourbon. And that being said, I was kind of out of new bourbons, so I picked up a fairly reasonably priced bourbon that's still fairly high quality. And that is the Four Roses Yellow Label Bourbon. Now, this bourbon has a long and storied history. For many decades, it was sold abroad in Japan and in Europe, but the label in the United States was for a very crappy American blended whiskey, much along the lines of Seagram's or, those bottom shelf brands. And eventually, they brought back the original recipe under the yellow label. Now, Four Roses is much more popular for its single barrel selections and for their small batch selections, but those are far beyond my price range for tonight, being at around $35 and $45 selectively. So I picked up a $19 bottle. So I've already poured out the bourbon. And it's a fairly light colored bourbon. I'd say it's almost a yellowish gold. And it's a mixture here of about 10 different batches, obviously mostly young, considering the color. So I'd say it's about 3-4 years old, the majority of it. Now the nose on this is just wonderful. There's very heavy vanilla, also caramel notes. And there's this very, very strong note. And once I got it, it's very difficult for me to get past it because it's just so reminiscent and brings back nostalgia of honey graham crackers. Smell that graham cracker goodness. Of course, there's also some oak in there. And a little bit of corn, too. It just really smells wonderful, very, very perfumey. If you could make a graham cracker perfume, this is what it would smell like. Hmm. Hmm. Huh. So this is 80 proof. So obviously, it's not super strong. It drinks very smoothly. It's quite nice. It's not very, as far as bourbons go, as I've tried, this one's not very sweet. But that's okay. I am not someone who likes an overly cloying sweetness. So the first thing that hits me is a very lemony rush at the front. And then, in the middle, a very sharp rye character asserts itself, and it almost has I'm finding it a very, that sort of peppermint towards the finish that rye whiskey has. Kind of a bready finish, interestingly enough. Not like graham cracker bready. It's very slightly, like I said, there's not much sweetness, so it's very slight sweetness in the finish. So it's just like a slightly sweetened bread, like a cracker. Oh, look, and there's a gecko there. Cool. He's come to join me. See him? It's over there on the window. cinnamon. Like I said, very reminiscent of a rye whiskey. But I hear that Four Roses uses a very high rye percentage in its mash, so that's not surprising. The lower corn percentage probably accounts for the lesser sweetness of it. There is a sort of corny sweetness that appears in the middle. That's when it's at its most sweet. And once get past that peppermint, you'll see that more typical bourbon notes to it. That sort of vanilla oaken character, and you know, a very caramel smooth finish on the tongue. You don't really taste like the caramel smoothness, but the finish is there on the tongue, if you know what I mean. What hits me is that this is a very savory bourbon, which is kind of odd. I've not had a bourbon that really tastes savory to me. In that this one, like a good Scotch whiskey, would actually go well with a meat dish. Being that it's not very sweet, you know, it could go well with some grilled meat or something. I'm finding this pretty complex, but I'm having a difficulty unfolding it because there's some sharp notes there. Peppermint really hits me hard, as well as sort of the lemon. There's all different kinds of things happening underneath that. I just love that rye spiciness. That's why rye whiskey is one of my favorites. Of course, rye whiskey being kind of expensive and kind of one note. So, you know, that's a nice thing about bourbon because of the blended mash bill. You can get a lot more variety in the taste. And as my final comments, I would say, despite the overall dryness, there's a sharp juiciness towards the middle. It just appears in a flash, and then kind of disappears again into the sort of dry, peppery sort of a little bit slight smoky woodiness to it, very slight. So, overall, Four Roses. You know, I'll probably come back to this. I think this is something that'll grow on me a little bit more as time passes, and perhaps as the like I said, I just opened this bottle, so it hasn't had a chance to really air out. So I'm kind of wondering if some of the more overwhelming notes will disappear as time goes on. So, yeah, I would highly suggest this. I would not use it as a mixer in drinks that require bourbon because it doesn't really have that sort of bourbon sweetness that's really what bourbon lends to the mixed drinks. But as a sipping whiskey, pretty damn good. That's your drink review for tonight, folks.